French soldiers took over from German sailors in Berlin yesterday, providing the honour guard for the visit of the British Prime Minister. So what sort of reaction is Mr Johnson going to get here? Yesterday in Berlin, Downing Street thought was largely positive. At least Angela Merkel held open the prospect that new arrangements in terms of the backstop might work. Today, well, Emmanuel Macron hasn't made very encouraging noises overnight. The substance of Mr Macron's reception today was as tough as ever. Renegotiation, he said, wasn't going to produce anything substantially different from the current withdrawal agreement. But it seems he didn't want to appear intransigent. With goodwill on both sides, he said, a solution is possible.
Bonjour mesdames, messieurs. On m'a toujours dépeint comme le plus dur de la bande. Je le dis pour le Premier ministre Johnson. Mais parce que moi, j'ai toujours dit très clairement, il y a un choix qui a été fait, donc ça sert à rien d'essayer de ne pas appliquer ce choix.
Today's discussions took place in the shadow of yesterday's meeting in Berlin, where Angela Merkel simply said that if the backstop were to be made redundant, as Mr Johnson wants, the negotiations of the UK's future relationship with the EU, supposed to take 2 years, would now have to take place in 30 days. In other words, it was a very difficult task. Today, though, Boris Johnson was clinging to a very different interpretation of her words.
I think what Angela Merkel was saying last night, if I got her correct, I think I was standing next to her, she said, if we can do this in 2 years, then we can do this in 30 days. And I admire that can-do spirit that she seemed to have there.
As the Prime Minister and the President went inside for a private discussion outside the Élysée Palace, there was a small problem. One of the cars in Mr Johnson's motorcade had a flat tyre. It's certainly been a good week for Boris Johnson in the sense that neither Paris nor Berlin gave him a flat no. But that doesn't mean he's any closer to renegotiating the backstop. It may simply be that neither capital wanted to get the blame when and if the wheels come off.
I think what Emmanuel Macron and I assume Angela Merkel want is to be seen as open. They don't want to be seen as closing the door already. And you know, in this game, nobody wants to be the culprit. Nobody wants to be to bear responsibility for failure. I think people are also pretty much aware that that's what Boris Johnson has in mind. That you know, he wants, if negotiations fail, he wants the EU to be seen as the culprit, not the UK, not himself, because ultimately what we assume he has in mind at the end of the day is a general election, and so he's talking to his voters.
And the way Mr Johnson has been talking hasn't made him any friends in Europe's capitals. The UK withdrawing officials from EU discussions from the 1st of September, refusing to nominate a new commissioner. All have gone down badly. Until 2017, Pierre Sellal was France's EU ambassador. No one understands the EU diplomatic community better than him.
I think it's not very wise to come towards the partners with a too much aggressive style. And in particular, let me insist on this idea of the lack of, this impression of lack of clarity of the intentions for the future of the new Prime Minister. Is it to anchor UK and its economy to Europe, or is it something else? And the fact there is so much ambiguity on this very core question, I think is not a very good omen for opening and compromising at the level of the 27.
As Boris Johnson left Paris, little of substance has actually changed. The distance between the EU and the UK hasn't got any smaller. In fact, the only thing that has is the time available to find a solution.